Hi, and welcome back to Continual. Tonight on the panel room, we're going to be talking about how do you go about crafting screenplays, films, movie, TV, and all that kind of fun stuff. Before we dive into the fun, I'm your host, Jim Nettles, and let's go around and see who has joined us for this level of mayhem. So, Mark, you're up first.
Oh, hi, I'm Marc Abbot. I am a horror writer. I am the author of Hell at the Way Station and Hell at Brooklyn T, and happy to be here.
Mr. Compton, sir.
I'm Joe Compton, and I'm an indie author and indie filmmaker. I made 4 short films back in 19 blah, 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 blah. And
they were on 8mm hand crank.
mini DV, but close enough, but I've also worked in production over 40 plus films in 5 different countries and spent 18 months in Hollywood pursuing my dream and dying a slow death. And I run Go Indie now.
John?
Hi, my name is John Hale. I'm a filmmaker out of Fairmont, West Virginia. I have made 4 shorts, The Conduit, Deep in the Heart, and Killer Caribou, which is featured on the Christmas horror anthology 13 Slays. Currently working on Deep in the Heart, which should be out this year, and I'll be working on my first feature film called Truck Squatch, coming out hopefully next year, a year and a half from now. So that's me.
Michelle?
I'm Michelle Iannantuono. I'm a writer and director from Charleston, South Carolina. I run Octopunk Media, which you could find on all the social medias. I've done as many films, getting to the point of forgetting how many there are. I'm at that point now. But some of the highlights are Live Scream, which is a found footage video game horror film. The sequel, Live Screamers, which is currently in production, will hopefully be out next year or later this year, early next year, as well as some fan films in the Detroit Become Human universe, Detroit Reawakening, and Detroit Evolution, which are on YouTube. So yeah, that's me.
And Elle Marie.
Hi, I'm Elle Marie Wood. I'm a psychological horror author. Write primarily novels, but I also write screenplays. I have about 5 of them in the festival circuit right now, both short and feature length. So I haven't produced more movies than I can remember, but there's that.
Give it time. Give it time.
It's getting there.
I've only done 1 novel in the same amount of time. So, we trade off.
Right.
Now I feel bad because I didn't mention that I've actually directed 3 short films.
Oh, well, there you go.
I did a horror short called Snap and another one called Being Followed. And I did 2 comedy pieces with my wife.
Awesome. And I've seen 2 of those. I was like, why is he not talking about that? I've seen 2 of those.
I wasn't
he also teaches, film at Speculative Fiction Academy, as does Joe. I mean, their bios, I could write.
I forgot that part too. I was going to mention that. I taught the Screenwriting 101 class at Fiction Academy, Speculative Fiction Academy, and I also I'm working on turning your novel into a movie. That's the next one. So,
well, let's actually start kind of down that path. I mean, because everybody here has written novels as well as screenplays, worked in fiction, everything else. So let's talk a little bit about if you're putting together and you're working on a screenplay or you're working on a stage play, something along those lines. What are kind of the first big differences you see and you run into, but versus working on a novel or working on a short story or working on that kind of a piece of fiction? So Mark, how about you? What's your experience in getting into how different it is to work with, I'm just putting stuff to paper versus I'm writing the script, the horror film when you're, the comedy horror with the wife, that's.
Well, screenplays for me are very heavy in dialogue. I love dialogue. So when I'm working on a screenplay or a stage play, I'm concentrating mostly on the dialogue, how people interact with one another, what they're saying. I don't really concentrate too much on what's going on outside of that dialogue until I kind of know exactly how everybody's going to interact with one another. Then I usually go back and then I kind of fill in the blanks I kind of work backwards that way. It kind of makes sense to me. I can do an outline and just know generally how the film is going to go. But mostly I try to get through the dialogue, because sometimes dialogue could be heavy. It can easily go off the rails. You could have people talking for 20 minutes before we get to the point of what's going on. And because film and stage is so visual, for me, it's not about having to write in those little details like I would with a novel or a short story, because with that medium, I've got to get the audience to kind of picture everything in their mind. When I'm doing a script or such, I already know location or where it's going to be, so I don't really concentrate too much on that descript.
How about you, Joe? What do you want to add to that?
Formatting. It is completely a different format. You have to follow the rules. You have to follow the rules in screenwriting. You have to. If you don't, you're not going to do it right. It's just part of the structure is so super important with filmmaking and screenwriting, in stage writing too. Stage writing very much so. You have to have directions and know what directions are what. And so, but for me, it's all about the formatting. I think you can tell a narrative story within a screenplay pretty much like you can with a novel, with the exceptions of, you know, not being overly descriptive, as Mark mentioned. But I would say you could still tell a really compelling story and still have a narrative voice. It's just the way it's formatted is completely different. And if you don't follow that format, you're going to get eaten alive.
John?
I want to follow up on that formatting thing you said. When I started writing screenplays, I had literally black from top all the way down. It was absolutely embarrassing. Then after I let a few people read my stuff, they're like, "Hey, man, this ain't really how you do screenplays." I'm like, "What do you mean?" And from there, I learned proper formatting. I now try to be as descriptive as I can within a 3-sentence block going across the screen going down. You know, for formatting is great, but also, you know, also trusting people to go and take a look at your work and build upon feedback. I really feel that, you know, sometimes we as artists, when we work on things, we get a little, you know, we get a little too precious with it. And all feedback we get, it's kind of like a personal attack. You got to use that and use it to become better, because there's only way you can get better is with really good feedback. And of course, you know, like Joe said, format. Learn those descriptive texts and find a good way to actually carry your reader along with you instead of just them slogging through a swamp of letters that you have on a page.
Michelle?
Back in the day when I considered myself sort of equal parts novelist and screenwriter, what came down to my chosen medium for each particular story was budget. It was sort of like my scripts were my scripts and my novels were scripts that were too expensive to film. Which, as I eventually realized, is not a great reason to be a novelist, because everybody would read my novels and be like, everybody's in white rooms and I can't picture anybody's facial expressions. And I'm like, well, that's somebody else's department. Oh, crap. No, it's not. And so I find that writing screenplays is a lot easier because, you know, I can say things like they fight. You know, that's the fight choreographer. I don't have to describe this fight scene. Great. And I don't have to really describe setting so much. You can really just focus on, you know, the way your characters move around and the dialogue, as Mark said. And I think that I do use my actors a lot to really bring the characters to life. And, you know, I provide the dialogue and I provide the backstory and I provide kind of what I'm trying to accomplish with the characters, but in terms of really bringing them to life and adding that performance element that a novelist would have to completely illustrate, you know, from start to finish in a book. I can kind of offset that mental load onto somebody else, which is nice. I think it's easier for me to be collaborative when I actually have other people to sort of contribute something, whereas it's tough being a novelist. You got to be all departments, you got to do all the things, and that's why it's so difficult to stand out and be great at scene directions and great at character and great at plot and great at, voice and all those things, because, with filmmakers, we get to share that load.
Marie.
That was really interesting what Michelle just said, because what her answer really talked about how a screenwriter is approaching that writing. But if you're writing it on spec, you're still having to do, there's no department, you're still alone doing it. So curious that if you're shooting it yourself and you're going to shoot yourself, or you have
I've
your
never
own
written
company.
a script I didn't film.
Right. No, I could tell because that's a completely different approach to the actual writing of the script. And I want to say that for anybody listening who thinks, oh, well, all the things she just said are exactly what she's doing in her business. But if you're trying to sell that screenplay to Hollywood or sell it to a producer that's going to shoot it, even if you're selling it to an indie producer sell it to Michelle, who's going to produce it, you're going to write that differently. So the original question you said, Jim, was, what's the first thing you notice when you go into writing a screenplay as opposed to writing a novel? And as a person who considers themselves a novelist first, but I do the screenplay thing too, if you will. For me, it's that I feel very restricted because I can't describe. I can't go on and have novels are 275 pages, before formatting. These things are 85,000 words. You've got space to describe every single thing if you want to, right? And you get down to a screenplay and you really shouldn't go over 120 pages, and that's kind of long too. So you really don't have that space. You don't have, like John mentioned, you can't have just the page filled with black. You've got to have, create white space, which means you create less words is what it means, right? Mm-hmm. And so you are restricted because, like Mark said, dialogue runs a screenplay. Just go to any movie and watch it. There's some may say, well, what about A Quiet Place? Sure, that was fantastic. Name me 5 more. You can't, right? That was dynamic. But most times movies are pushed forward by dialogue. But so that answer for you, Jim, is that whole, you've got to be brief. It's restrictive for me as a novelist. But the approach to writing this screenplay, which is what Michelle was talking about, and Joe shoots his own, John shoots his own. It's just the way that you were thinking about that is different from how I think about it, putting my stuff into the festival circuit, because I can't put my stuff into the festival circuit written the way you just described it. They'll say, Nat, too much stage direction. What are you talking about? They fight. And what do you mean by that? I'm the person who has to write that down. So interesting. I think that if you're going to be writing screenplays, initially, it depends on what you're doing. If you write it and say, I'm going to send it to festivals, you got to write it as though you're writing it on spec, which truly just means writing it and hoping someone buys it. So you write it based upon all of that formatting that Joe talked about, all the rules. If you're going to shoot it yourself, you can be a little bit more relaxed because you're producing this. So you can be in different, but you can't, even then, you got to have some team that's going to look at it. So it all depends on I don't know. What do you think about that, Joe?
If you got people in the industry, like Michelle was saying, you got collaborators, they know what a screenplay looks like. They know what to expect. They know how to break it down for their perspective. So it still has to follow the format rules, because if it doesn't, you could probably be a little bit more, descriptive and whatever you want, or less descriptive in that case as well, because you're probably gearing it toward a specific, DP or actor, so how they perform. Mm-hmm. If you're filming it yourself, you're really gearing it toward the people that you're going to probably put into this thing and involve them, so you kind of write it for them in the way that they like it, but you still have to write it in the format. I think you still have to follow the format, and I think a good practice for anybody who's making their own films is to try to do it as a spec, just to kind of get it down, especially if it's one of your first or second films, that you're trying to. For Michelle, it's probably like breathing now. She can just go and not worry about it. But for anybody who's starting out, they should really look at spec and look at how that's formatted, because I think that will help them understand what they're about to get into.
For me, there's only one rule that I absolutely follow no matter what, and that is do not write a description that you cannot portray visually. Do
Mhm.
not convey information that cannot be portrayed visually. That was the best thing I learned in screenwriting class. So
Yeah.
don't say like, a lot of backstory about this character. If
No,
that is
but-
not evident from the thing that you are showing on screen and the audience cannot convey that from, what you are conveying on screen, then it's meaningless. So yeah.
Yeah, because
When Robert
voiceovers are not a thing anymore. I mean, like, not really.
Right.
So you can't.
Oh,
You
I
can't
got a
talk
friend
about what
who
their thought
hates
process is.
narration.
But one of the first things Robert McKee says in his story class is, if you put fucking Brad, oh sorry, if you put Brad,
He stole my.
Sorry.
From you.
sorry, I was quoting McKee. McKee is very bold.
Right.
Oh, it's
right.
acceptable.
But Robert, the first thing that Robert McKee always says in his class is that if you put Brad Pitt as your character, if you say Brad Pitt walks in the room, I'm going to set that script on fire and let everybody stomp on it, because that is the most ridiculous thing you could possibly put into a screenplay. If you're specifically aiming for something, if you're especially on spec, you're never going to get it. So you might as well be as lackluster and non-descriptive as possible.
Well, that actually kind of goes to the next thing I wanted to talk about is, as when you're writing a novel, you're setting everything up, you're building the world, and the team of people that helps you to sculpt that are you as the author or your co-authors and your editors. I mean, you've got a small team of people that have very specific skill sets to help shape and sculpt the world and everything you're building, because you've got to package it all using the words, using the narrative. However, when you're going and working on that script, whether it's a stage play, whether it's going to film, you've got a different kind of team and a lot of other people that are having to work with and manage that narrative, and will ultimately sculpt that end product. So Joe, who's all the people, and going back to your days in Hollywood and everything else, being the big time producer, grabbing the coffee, what's the experience you've got for the team of people you've got, and how that's different from working with your editorial team and other people to sculpt that end product?
It's fairly similar, actually, in a lot of respects. But I mean, ultimately, as a novelist, you're kind of, as Michelle said, you're kind of in your own element for a long period of time. You are as a screenwriter too, but you are thinking ahead, as a screenwriter, how a producer is going to look at this, how an editor is going to look at this. And so there's quite a few people involved. That's the really cool thing. I think one of the coolest things about making a movie is that you have all these creative forces coming together to make one vision. And that's kind of the neatest thing about it. So there's a lot of things involved. There's the production team that has to figure out the setting and then setting up the setting. There's the character. Obviously, there's the actors. We can't forget about the actors. The actors need to be first and foremost. You got to have the actors. You have to have a DP, which is a director of photography, somebody who's going to actually shoot your vision and figure that out. And they need to take the script and do what they do with it. And then they're going to give that to the lighting people who are going to light whatever the DP is going to set up. And then they have the sound and the gaffing. And there's multiple departments in film that are different from novel writing, and the fact that you're compartmentalized from writing it to editing it to publishing it kind of idea. And that at the publisher, it might go through a few dozen people, like who make the cover, who will write the blurb if you're doing traditional publishing. But if you're indie, you're doing it all. And with an indie filmmaker, you're the same. I'm probably doing 50 or 60 different things on a film set as well. So it's just all depends on what I'm given and the resources I'm given. But in Hollywood, there's 1,000 people touching a script at a time. So it's just the way it works.
How about you, John? How do you look at creating the end product very differently?
Well, let's see, going back to what Joe said, when you're doing something in Hollywood, it goes through multiple hands as it goes through the creative process. Unfortunately, when you're indie, that's pretty much, you look at what you can do yourself in order to save money and time. For instance, when we just now got done filming this film called Deep in the Heart. It takes place in Texas inside of a cave system. So immediately when I was adapting that, I was like, man, we need to find a cave. I need to find a catfish monster. I ain't the, this needs to look like Texas. But you know what? That's for John down the road. We're not worried about that. When John's writing, So when I write that, I write the script and I look, and of course, you have all these elements you have to meet. So it's kind of like almost an internal battle. There's nothing worse, I think, as an indie filmmaker when the producer version of you meets the director version of you, because it's like, oh, we can't afford to do this, but I really, really want to do it. So you figure out, do we have enough money in order to make these things happen? That's a constant battle that I always face. And future John always hates past John for saying, oh, that'll be something we take care of down the road. But yeah, I think whenever you are sitting here working on your own individual or indie scripts and everything, you do have to take into knowledge and account of what you can get access to and what exactly it's going to take in order to get that project off the ground.
There's a reason that all alien worlds look like Vancouver these days.
Exactly. Tax incentives are great.
How about you, Michelle? So for you, when you're going and packaging, taking from script into final product, how's it different with you and your team?
Compared to being a novelist, or just in general?
Just in general. I mean, compared to being a novelist and working the different products and.
So my process is basically, I have a couple of concepts of, scripts that I've thought about just writing and then putting on the blacklist, or just putting out there for somebody to maybe acquire. I've never gotten around to doing it because I'm always too busy making movies. I'm always too busy writing the scripts for the stuff I actually have to go make myself. So for me, I have where am I at? Like 7 shorts and 3 features, I think at this point is basically where I'm at since 2016. So I've spent like the last 6 years working on all of that stuff. And every time it's been a process of knowing what project I want to write next, and already having like the plan for how I'm going to finance it, maybe an idea of who's going to be in it. Most of the time when I write a script, I kind of already know at least who a couple of my lead actors are going to be, because I have so many long-term collaborators and I tend to write roles for certain people these days. And then usually it's about 50-50 people I know, and then 50% new faces that I like to cast and bring on. I at this point have a DP that I love, Rachel Summers. She's going to be my forever DP, so I will always write things with kind of her in mind. And I know that she can basically do anything. And when I write scripts, and I think this is true of spec, or this is just kind of what you're supposed to do. Again, I don't tend to step on other people's departments. I don't write a lot of like pan or zoom, or like I don't write camera directions and stuff in my script, because it's not my job. That's the DP's job to figure out, unless there's something very, very specific that I want to catch, like an insert shot or something that really like evokes something that I want to convey. So I'll give the script to Summers, and she'll do a shot list, and she'll basically we'll go over it together. And it's a lot of like meetings. It's a lot of talking to people, and trying to note all the different pieces that are coming together. As John said, when you're independent, you do a lot of things by yourself. You wear kind of 1,000 hats. So I kind of still am department head for like everything. I tell the makeup artist what to do. I'm sort of still telling the DP kind of what to do. But at the same time, I've found that the more I've made films, with every film that I make, I try to find somebody new to bring in and to take one more job away from me. The past few, it's been costume design. I did costume design for like all my stuff up until like 3 movies ago. And then I brought in a costume designer. Now I never want to go back. I've outsourced catering now, which I recommend any filmmaker do that. If you're going out and making your own films, outsource catering as soon as you can. It's the worst. It is the worst to do your own crafty. Just hire a local crafty company. They'll do a great job. You won't have to worry about it. You won't have to fill your car with Sam's Club stuff every day. So yeah, and then I also edit all of my own stuff as well, and that's something I'm not prepared to let go of for a long while. I think that we say that there's the film you write, the film you shoot, and the film you edit, and all 3 are different. And to oversee that entire process really, for me, gets the final product as close to the script as I could kind of imagine, because I'm overseeing the entire, vision from start to finish.
Marie, how about you?
because I approach it from a different standpoint, I look at the different jobs that are coming in, they're involved with novel writing and editing and then releasing the book and screenwriting as completely different things, right? For me, I write the screenplay and then I'm trying to sell it or I'm trying to get into a festival and do well with it, either win it and use it or lose and use it, network with it in some way. I recognize that once this thing is gone out of my hands and it goes to whoever's going to shoot it, I don't get to say I sold it I literally am out of it. So I could say what I want to say over here in the corner and be happy or frustrated, but it's not going to matter. If I said I want an orange wall and they make it pink, so I might have wanted it orange. Mm-hmm. No one's going to ask me why I said I wanted orange. I have sold this thing. And that's upsetting, right? But that's the fact of doing it on spec, if you will, right? So you sell it, it's gone from you. Then, the teams shoot it, make the movie, it's movie magic, and it's either fantastic and we've heard stories about where the person who wrote the screenplay, there's famous novels that have been adapted to film that the author couldn't stand. And I'm talking about famous people, like I'm not gonna name drop, but just think about it. You've heard the news and they don't like it necessarily all the time. And I understand that completely, but once it's gone from you, it's gone from you. But and in a novel, once it's gone from you, it's gone from you. Yes. But at the same time, like you're writing the novel, then you send it in, right? And the edits, truly, mind you, different stages of your career. If you are at the very beginning of your career, you might very well be in developmental edits by the time when you submit it to your publishing house and they have their editing team look. Maybe. But at the stage of the career that I'm in now, my edits are grammar. I don't know how to format an M-dash. I don't, and everybody knows it. So they fix it for me. If they just know it's coming. Because I'm like, there must be 75,000 M-dashes here. They're all going to be wrong. And they know. But it's not developmental editing. And meaning it's not help me make sure there's story continuity or that there's not line editing where help me make this sentence make sense. That's not where I am now. I might have been years ago, but I'm not there today. So therefore, the situation where I'm going into edits, it's the editor's contributing, but it's not the same as me making the story with the editor. That's kind of, it's not a collaborative effort because frankly, if my editor got sick and then there was no one else to assign to the book, I'll just fix the M-dashes. You know what I'm saying? I'll just have to do it and let's go. Because I'm not looking for the certain assistance that is implied when you talk about collaboration, because then it is a work. The collaboration comes between me, the novelist, and the reader. Okay. From a movie, it comes from me, the screenwriter, to the person who bought it, hoping and praying and crossing everything, hoping that they don't just change everything and make it pink walls and purple sky and hope it comes out the way I wanted it to. So it's a different approach from my perspective. So they're two different animals, if you will. One of them both of which you have to wave goodbye and say good luck, right? But some of them, your actual collaborator is the person you're sending it to read. So with the reader, I'm collaborating with you on this story. Otherwise, the filmmaker's making their own thing with my skeleton.
How about you, Mark?
So I have taken short stories that I've written and turned them into short films. I have a DP that I absolutely love. And the first thing we do is we sit down and we go straight to the creature and go, okay, so how much is this guy going to cost us in terms of what kind of creature we're going to make and how we can not make this thing look like a rubber suit and believable. And then from there, honestly, we go location scouting. That's usually we're in the car, he's reading the script and he's giving me advice like, you want to shoot in a cemetery? I know a cemetery. Let's go. Let's take a look at some places and things of that nature. And this is long before we even sit down and talk with the actors, because I want to be able to know that I can pull this off, because everybody who does film knows that particularly when you're an indie filmmaker, places close down, the cops show up, if you're guerrilla filmmaking, I have a cemetery here in New York where literally the security guard drove by and I was like, well, how long do you guys know? Oh, we pass by every like 20, 25 minutes. And then I turn around like, we got 10 minutes to shoot this scene before they come back here. So put the sticks down, let's get to it, and let's shoot this thing from 3 different angles and get out of here. And, you know, again, it's usually, I'm more concerned with budget than anything else. I've used my apartment more times. More horrifying things have happened in my apartment from different angles. People are like, why don't you just move? Because you just have everything in your apartment. Because I can't afford locations.
Especially
But-
not in New York with the permits.
There
Right.
it is. So it's the approach usually is based on budget. Really what I can do with because I have a lot of trust in my DP. I have a lot of trust in my actors. When we get down to the editing, like I literally have an entire Final Cut suite on my computer, and I get the editor to come over and I sit next to him. And I let them go to town. And if they ask me, is there anything in particular you want? Then I'll say, okay, yeah, you know, tweak this, that, the other thing. I kind of stay in my wheelhouse when it comes to director and writer. And then I can actually speak on the back end of being an actor, being on set and then kind of working with the director, knowing exactly what they want, reading the script and saying, I don't really understand what it is that you want here. Because sometimes I've been on sets where I've gotten the script and I'll look at it and I'll say, well, is there something in particular you want this guy to do? Do you just want me to say these lines and just keep it moving? And oftentimes they'll be like, well, you know, I want you to, you know, get inside, because directors will tell actors, get inside the character, become the character. Here's a little bit of backstory here that you need to know. You know, and then you just kind of get involved with exactly how you think that character is going to be. As a writer who's written stuff and tried to sell it, it's the same adage. Like when I write a screenplay, I try to keep in mind what I know is not going to work. I will not write a screenplay where the opening of the movie is the Madison Square Garden gets bombed by some kind of terrorists and there it is. Because unless John McTiernan says, hey, we're doing a new Die Hard, we want you to write the script, and I know exactly what he wants, as a first time or second or third time author / screenwriter, you have to keep in mind that the production in and of itself, you know, they want to do something great, but they don't. The second they see that on page 1, the opening of your screenplay, like you said, with you know, Brad Pitt walks in the room, or you know, terrorist walks into an airport, pulls the lever and bomb. They're like, yeah, nah, we're not doing this. So you know, you got to kind of keep, when you're writing these kind of things, you got to keep all of those kind of things in mind.
So we've talked a fair amount here, or we started going down the path of dialogue, because at the end of the day, every story is about the people you meet, the people you interact with, whether they've got, and especially even in film where they may not even have a line, but could be fundamental to the story. There's something there about them that their presence is important. How do you go about crafting the lines, the dialogue, and creating those characters when, you know, you may not have the control over how the actors portray those lines? Because especially when you're not necessarily working with the dialogue tags, or, you know, in your mind, somebody says something as they're sipping a cup of tea and the sly grin comes across their face, and then the actor does something completely different and looks like the Cheshire Cat, you know, which carries an entirely different emotion. Not that I'm looking at El Marie at all about being a Cheshire Cat in the corner. So, John, how does that work for you? How do you go about the dialogue and writing the dialogue to pull people into those characters and set that up well enough for your actors?
There is an amazing book, and I think it's called Working with Actors, I believe. And one of the things that she says in the book is you have to do your character homework. You have to sit here and almost come up with a background for your character. And then when you approach the actor, just like you say, they might do something differently than you interpret it to in the script. There should be a time where you sit down with the actor and you guys talk about the character. And you say, well, this is what I'm looking for here. And then they have a little rap back and forth. And then from there, that way it doesn't really surprise you with anything. Dialogue was the hardest thing for me to nail down because, I had the big problem when I first started writing is all the characters sound like me. And that was a really big problem. And then it wasn't until I started making up character dialogue, character background, where did this person come from? What kind of home life did he have? Do you have wife and kids? What's his family like? If he's a bad guy, what made him bad? Give him something to actually work on. And in that way, when you're talking to an actor and they want to bring in and do their own thing, you don't want to shut down that creative process whatsoever. You want to kind of help enhance it. But of course, you as director, it's your film at the end of the day, So usually with that, like I said, you do character background, you collaborate with the actor, and you guys get on the same page before you roll a single ounce of film. That way, the dialogue that you have, the performances all gel together and work great on film or on screen.
Michelle?
I think there's three things you really need to nail with dialogue. The first one is it realistic? Do these people sound like human beings actually having a normal human conversation? Or do they sound like they're sort of aware of the camera and that there's information that needs to be conveyed to the audience? As you know, Bob, I am a mother of 5 children, which is a very clunky, that's what we call clunky exposition. That's actually true of novels as well. Novels, you just get to cheat because you get to narrate in a novel. So you don't have to put all that stuff in the dialogue so much. Whereas, a lot of people, because they're like, well, I don't know how to convey any information other than just having the characters say it. And that's, I remember it's a visual medium. It's like you can put in clues, you can put in, set dressing and costumes and all that can convey character in addition to dialogue. I would say the second thing is voice. I once read that you should be able to remove the character tags from a sheet of screenplay and still know who's talking. And if you can't, then you need to change the voice of one of your characters because they're not distinct enough. And that is something I've tried to be more conscious of the more I've grown as a screenwriter, is to make sure that every character has a certain way of speaking, the way John said, informed by kind of where they're from, their socioeconomic background, whether or not they're sort of a sarcastic or a funny character, or whether or not they're a more serious character, their age, all that stuff sort of contributes to that. And I would also say, is there flow? And that's the thing I actually have the hardest time with. And the thing that I have to kind of edit the most in dialogue is the concept of flow. Is the dialogue clunky? Is it hard for an actor to get out those words in that order? I tend to overwrite dialogue. I tend to, maybe state the same things twice. I tend to maybe put, a sentence where there's 10 words when 5 would do. So that tends to be my most frequent edits to my dialogue, is just tightening things. And that usually comes out when we do our first table read. And that's where I like to get a lot of actor input. And because when I actually hear people try to say the things that I wrote, then it's like, oh, okay, yeah, no, we need to fix that.
Marie?
So again, different perspective, right? I don't get the chance to sit down with any actors and hear how they're going to read it or answer a question about motivation. So I have to try and attack that before, because how I handle that is the judgment of whether or not someone's going to continue to read it, sit by it, nominate it, whatever. So very much like what Michelle just mentioned about voice and flow, I will act out my own scene in here. It looks insane and people see it, and I used to be embarrassed, but today I'm not. If I am in here yelling and there's no one in here, everyone knows what I'm doing, right? Because my character's yelling, and then I'll say it a different way, and then I'll look and see, was there any stuttering? Because people stutter in real life. Do they continue? Do they repeat themselves? Surely they do, especially when they're preoccupied. So how do I want this character, to really sound? And then what would the person that they're talking to say in response to that? So a lot of the writing can be, it's verbal. And then I write down whatever that was so that I can get the same idea of, did it make sense? If I call, you got to be careful with using terminology that's popular in California, but not so much in Texas, or not so much in New York. This movie, you want your movie to play everywhere, you need to explain what dusky is, right? I didn't know what it was until I tried to use it, not using it. It's just, you have to, there's a lot of research that goes into dialogue, but the research can be a lot of different things. Watch movies, watch the movies that you like, watch movies you don't like and see why you don't like it. Listen to people talking out, where the world is opening back up. So go on and listen to what people are saying. I'm not saying be creepy about it, right? But listen, because you need to hear conversation to be able to write dialogue. That's what you're using. So if you're not hearing it, which we were all starved for it for a couple of years here, now you can get access to it again. And your writing, if you're not having access to a cast, your writing has to stand on its own, so that you can't say, oh, that actor didn't act my line the way I wanted it acted. No, that's how you wrote it and that's how they interpreted it. And the interpretation will be different every time. Brad Pitt acts differently than Mads Mikkelsen does, right? You decide which one you like. Whose interpretation of the same line do you like? But if I wrote it a third way and neither one of those guys acted the line the way I wanted them to, it's no one's fault. If I said I wanted them to say it in a specific manner, I needed to be a little more clear about that. So there's an onus that lays on the writer, just purely, that if you don't have the option to discuss and go through character sketches and go through, table reads and all that stuff, because those are luxuries that as a spec writer, I don't get, you have to craft your dialogue closely. And that takes a lot of practice.
How about you, Mark?
Well, El Marie and I do the same thing, because I frighten my family more times than I care with speaking different voices and having full-blown conversations, literally like looking back and forth, like talking like this one guy and then talking a lot of this, because we got to make sure we go down there and take care of these things. One of the things about writing dialogue, though, because Michelle mentioned that it has to be distinct. I tend to write the way people sound. I have a bad thing about writing regular dialogue and just saying he's from the South, because the Southwest sounds a whole lot different than Mountain South, than Florida South, than Texas. So a lot of times, like I have characters in a story where I have two Southern characters, but one was from Georgia, the other one's from Virginia. They have two totally different ways of speaking. So when I write the dialogue, I write, the way they speak. It can often be jarring for people who are not used to it, because they'll look at it and they'll try to read it like, if I put THA, it's the, but with the A, it's got a little accent to it. It's a different way of speaking. And people will look at it and be like, that, and it's like, no. You gotta, listen to, because they're trying to read it normally, as opposed to how people, because particularly with people with accents, that also goes with, if you're writing dialogue for anybody that does not speak English, and I cannot stress this enough, do your homework on how to write in another language. I know some people have, like, I have a character that speaks Spanish. She speaks Spanglish between her and her grandmother. And people are like, well, why don't you just use the translate? I say, because people don't speak that way. It's almost like when you say speak English, but people, there's slangs and there are different types of ways of saying things. So if you use a word in a different language that you think it means, like your Word document tells you it means this, and they read it and they're like, yeah, no, that's not what that means in my language. You do not want to use that word. You just insulted 50 people. I always say, just make sure you do your homework if you're going to go that route, because again, when we talk about doing realistic dialogue, you want conversations and people to interact realistically. But you also need to make sure that you do your homework and you write it properly.
Joe?
Well, I, like Elmarie and Mark, do a lot of out loud reading, but I take it a step further now because I have one of these and I record it and then I play it back. So I'm even scarier a second time to people. Like they'll hear me and then I'll echo the same thing over and they'll be like, didn't you just say that? Yeah. Well, yeah, of course. But I do that because hearing it and speaking it are two different things as well. Yeah. I have a tendency as a writer to miss words. Like I think I wrote it in there, but I didn't write it. And so like when I read it back, I'll even read it with the idea that I had it in there. And then I'll look at the screenplay while I'm listening to my recording of myself and realize, oh, wait, the word's not there anymore. So it helps me edit as well as much as anything. But to find the voices and things like that, that's what I do. I do it out loud quite a bit. And table reads are my best friend. When I started and I had nobody, it was me. And, again, I'm super old in this business. So I was using tape recorders and, whatever I could to record. I've been recording myself since I was 10 years old. So I've been doing that all this time without even knowing that it had benefits. I was just doing it to be whatever. I don't know. But in doing that, I learned how I sound and, things like that. But when I started to get a network of people who I was regularly hiring and casting, I would definitely bring them on virtually almost as soon as I had a final draft ready to go, and we would do a table read. And not only would that help me, but it helps them because then I can also see what part maybe I think they're going to be this part, but maybe they read it differently. And so maybe I'm got to change it. I had this happen to me. I had an actor, I wrote a part for like a Brooklyn accent. The guy came in the audition and did it as a cowboy. And I rewrote the entire thing because he nailed it. It was like he found the voice without me ever having the voice. So you have to depend on the actor sometimes too to help you with that. But if you're writing for spec, it's a lot of you're in your own little dark corner recording yourself and listening to that. So
I also think that there's still virtue for table reads even on spec though, because I've seen multiple instances of just like at festivals. I've actually even gone to like a local theater where there was a producer and screenwriter who had written a feature, and he got some actors together and they didn't perform the script. It was still kind of a table read, but they added like some embellishments to it, some music and stuff. And they're kind of doing that as a way to sort of pitch the script and to sell the script. And it's not the final cast. It's not, they're still going to sell it and give it to somebody to do what they want with it, but it helps you as the writer to kind of really see it play out and edit it even further. For that reason.
You have to be very, very, very clear that you're not getting this part in this movie.
Yes.
You're just for me and my ears,
Right.
because actors get in their head.
And
then you've lost that person the rest of your life. They're like,
And-
I thought you were gonna give me that part.
Right. And the thing about
I
it
didn't hire you. I don't know what you want.
Exactly. The thing about that is, I agree. It's great to hear it. Much, much benefit. You could do the very same, not to say that our families are all actors, but you could try it because Joe's right. Listen, we come into this without a network, a lot of us, right? I mean, I definitely did. And I have been in this for years now, and I still don't have a network full of people that I would give this, my most recent feature to, because 2 or 3 of the people that I'm looking at would be like, this is gonna be the best role of my life. And I'm like, oh yeah, but I'm not giving it to you though. We're trying to sell this thing, right? We're selling it. I mean, don't look at me. So you can try it. Use the people in your life if you can. Believe me, when it's funny, because when someone that you know and trust tries to act and gives you this line and they're doing their darndest to give you that line, you will hear all the errors in your writing.
Well,
at one point I was like, how did I spell that word that you said it like that? I don't want to see what I put on the paper.
The worst is when they add a word and you didn't have it in there, and you have to go back. That's why I've always recorded. That's another tip. Record your table reads, film them, or even just record them on audio. Record them and watch them and listen to them back, because actors will naturally, if you're doing actors especially, they'll naturally add things and they'll do things just naturally that you didn't ever have in your own head. And so you can get that and use that, especially for a spec. That would be awesome for a spec, you know?
Yeah. Yep.
I had an actor that just kept saying Simone. And I was like, what is Simone? It's come on. I was like, what is wrong with you?
Oh,
He kept saying, he
man.
put the C-O-M in. I'm like, no, it's come on. You know, like, come on. Oh,
Simone.
I mean, it helped me because I had too many come ons in there. So I was like, yeah, let me get already. Come on.
and that's when you find out somebody's got a particular affectation that you didn't know that character had until after that.
That's funny. Oh my gosh.
So, we're coming up. We've been going for a while, but I do want to throw one last question out there, because this is always the fun one that, everybody looks and shakes their head at. And Michelle, you get to go first. What is the number one thing you wish you had known before you started down this path?
Number one thing I wish I had known about screenwriting, I'm assuming
Going down screenwriting and film and kind of going down this path. The visual medium of storytelling.
Visual medium storytelling generally. I learned something with every film, so it's very hard to think about the most valuable lesson. But I would say that the most valuable thing I've done, as I said before, is outsourcing as much as I possibly can. Anything that is not my specific strength, because like I think I have strength in directing, writing, and editing, but I am not a DP. I am not a cinematographer. I had to shoot my own stuff in the beginning because that was the budget, but it wasn't until I was able to give that to somebody who that is their bread and butter, that is their passion, that is, what they can bring 100% to, where I was only bringing 10% to, that I could elevate my work. And that happened with costumes. It happened when, I started casting a wider net for actors, when I started really digging into finding the perfect person from the role, even if they were 1,000 miles away, and bringing them into town and not limiting myself to the pool of people within, the driving distance of my house. Just trying very hard to find better and better talent and assembling better and better teams. That is the secret sauce, I think, to being a successful filmmaker. As far as the writing goes, specifically, because I know that this is really a screenwriting panel. I would say, man, that is tough, because I've been writing since I was 5 years old, and I've been it's 25 years of stuff, and it's been a slow burn this entire time. So there wasn't like a big aha moment where I suddenly got over this hump of like everything was horrible and now everything is good. It's just kind of been like terrible, decent, good, great. Just kind of, and then back to good. It is kind of non-linearly at this point. It's just like we got some hits and some misses. But I think one of the most valuable things I've done is that is kind of related to my writing is I do director's breakdowns now. And this is useful as a screenwriter as well, even if you are not going to be the director, because what it basically is beside every single line of dialogue, I write why they're saying that thing. And it really helps keep character consistency. It really helps me think hard about every line of dialogue and everything a character does and says, and make sure that it's consistent, and that it's internally logical, and that it's motivated, that it creates conflict, that it's not just there to fill time, because as El Marie said, like, you only got so many words, you have 120 pages, you need to cut out anything that does not contribute. So yeah, I would recommend everybody do that. Even if you're, not the director, even if you're just, the screenwriter and you're going to sell the script later, is to go by and annotate and really think about what your characters are saying and doing, every step of the way.
El Marie?
Shoot. I'm next, Tom. Well, it's funny, Michelle, you said 25 years after you said you'd been writing since you were 5. And I said we were sisters, but I'm your older sister if we are, because 25 is not enough years for me. But I have been writing since I was 5. The question, Jim, let me be sure that I'm answering the one you want. It is, what do I wish I had known coming into screenwriting that what do I wish I'd known at the beginning?
What do you wish you'd done in the beginning? Or what's the one thing you think that somebody who is getting started, you needs to know based on your experience? And
yeah, okay, I'm
don't do it is not the answer. But
no, it's not my answer at all. And I don't want to, I'm going to say this, but this is not the real answer. This is an important answer. Like, formatting is important. Don't ever just shirk that. Like, it is. In the end, if you're going on spec, because I've seen a script that if you're producing it yourself, it looks different. It almost looks like, well, the one that I looked at looked a lot like a stage play. And I was like, that's cool, but wow, it's so different from what I'm putting out. So it depends. Like Joe said, try it out, learn it, and then if you're going to do your own stuff, you may not have to be as rigid. But that's not the answer I'm going to give. I just want to reiterate that. The answer that I am going to give is, as it relates to me, what I wish I had known was that I was actually going to keep doing it. So let me expound a little bit. I've been writing since I was 5, but there were short stories, and I guess my first thing was a novella, but I didn't have a word for it, right? When I realized I was actually going to keep writing and doing something with it I was early 20s. And but that said, I had gone to school at Howard University for film production, right? I learned early on I didn't want to be behind the camera. But you get so many credits in, you're not switching your major after a while. It's going to finish up and be done. And I took this screenwriting class, and it was just one class. And I said, gee, this is the most amazing thing I've ever done in my whole life. Then I said, well, I wrote this screenplay. We shot it. I didn't shoot it. I was an actor in it. Wasn't that awesome? I wrote it, then I acted in it. It was cool. I loved it. That was like one of the best experiences ever. And I also learned that I can't act because I laughed too much. It was divulged in that day, right? Just whatever. You learn things about yourself. You have to know yourself.
And the bad part of that was you were a serial killer in that one. I mean, I
was murdered. Thank you. But I was on the floor, like rolling half the time and kicking people. It was just a mess, honestly. But it was great. And I said, this is fantastic. And then life happened, and I didn't write a thing, at least not a screenplay, for like years. I didn't know it was going to come back to me like that. And I mean, I'm talking after college, I went and wrote this feature-length screenplay. I took a couple of actors out to dinner, watched them get hit on while I'm trying to talk to you. I'm paying for a meal, and you got to, look, pay attention. I don't care about these girls behind me. It was incredible. I was like, you're on a date. How about you're on a date? Maybe you're on a date. Let's be on a date then. It was ridiculous, but got him signed a couple of people remotely. Didn't sell that daggone thing, but I had a bunch of people attached to it, just didn't sell it. And at some point, I stopped. And then I realized I thought it was gone. So I wish that I had realized it was going to come back, because when it came back, it surprised me. And I wrote in a flurry, and I produced, oh my God, in that month-long flurry, like 4 shorts and 2 feature length. It was like a nonstop. It's like I just wrote. I didn't sleep, and I just didn't know. And now I'm back. I'm at a place that I feel pretty comfortable. But there was a time period where I was kind of saying, "Man, I wasted a lot of time." But no, I think that I don't know that I could have done anything differently. I'm not one who looks back and says with a whole bunch of regrets. I think that perhaps this is when I was supposed to be doing this as opposed to before. But I wish I had known that it was going to come back with such gangbusters, because perhaps I would have, taken the classes that I took that I ended up having to cram. I would have taken them with a little more focus as opposed to, trying to, because I wanted to get this piece done and I wanted it to be formatted correctly. And, so I don't know. I wish I knew that, but I have literally 100% no regrets about doing it way back when and doing it now. It is, if you love it, you love it. If you are meant to do it, you'll know, because this is not an easy business. I want to be clear. And it doesn't matter if you're shooting your own movies or if you are writing on spec, it doesn't matter. This is a very difficult business. And if you love it, you already know that. So mine's kind of positive, I think.
Mark, how about you? What's the one thing that you think that somebody's coming in, getting started, or what's the one thing you wish you'd have known when you were first getting started?
The difference between an actual script and a shooting script. We didn't have screenwriting classes when I was in college. I went to undergrad for radio, television, film, and the thing they didn't teach us how to do was write for the medium. So a lot of times what would happen is I would go to conventions, I would see screenplays from movies, and I would buy them for like $20 and go back and then copy, not copy that script, but copy the style. And so I'd have these screenplays that would have camera angles and all these little shot descriptions, not realizing, one, you're probably never going to shoot this thing. And two, nobody really cares how you see this thing looking in terms of, exterior, building, day, wide shot, crane shot of city. Like, nobody cares. That's not the element of what you're doing. So I really wish I had known more about the basics of writing a script, and because I think my work would have gotten stronger over time. I think one of the things that happened with me was because I could never sell screenplays, I turned my screenplays into books. And I was able to fill in all of that extra stuff I couldn't do on film, which I absolutely enjoyed. But I think it also taught me how to start to learn to condense a story. Because if you can take a 250, 300 page novel and cut it down to a 125 page screenplay, that's an extraordinary thing to learn. So, if you're not in a class, or if you're still, I don't even know if people still sell screenplays on the street anymore. But if you happen to find one or buy one, don't use it to write your screenplay. Use it as a tool to learn the format and how things should look. But just keep in mind that all of that extra stuff inside, that's not necessary. The concentration should be on the story and crafting it well.
And I do keep a stock of scripts, in my trench coat pocket. So if you see me walking by in a trench coat, here you go. What you want? I got some. Joe, what's
You're like the Rollo of screenplays, huh?
What kind of genre you want? I got comedy.
Yeah, I got comedy.
Horror. Come on. I got awesome.
This whole side's just Marvel. This whole side's just
Yeah,
Marvel.
yeah. This is where all the money is. This is where all the money is.
Oh my gosh.
Well, like Mark, I think that's actually something I was going to say. So I'll say something different, and that is realize that the story you're telling is your story and not Tarantino's, not Richard Rodriguez, Robert Rodriguez. It's not Terrence Malick. Write the story you want to write and write it from your voice, and go get yourself the Screenwriter's Bible. Go get yourself formatting books and format that story that you want to tell. And don't worry about if it's unique enough, if it's crazy enough. Don't think you can reinvent the wheel. Just tell your story and tell it in the context of how you're supposed to tell a story, and then worry about all of the voice and everything like that afterwards. And I will say, for filmmaking purposes, if you're out there and you want to make your film, learn the value of lighting and sound, because those are going to be your best friends. Ultimately, that's what takes it from a amateur film to an actual movie. Pay attention to those things. Even if you're doing it yourself, figure out, there's plenty of YouTube tutorials and things like that you can find on your own, and do the research on those things and know those things. And as the person who's going to be running the set, know those things anyway. Just know basic knowledge about them. Don't go in there going, oh, you're the camera guy, you do the camera thing. They want direction. They want you to collaborate. This is a collaborative medium, so collaborate and take charge of your own project and your own passion.
John?
Oh man, so many people have said so many good things. What I have learned, what I now know that I wish I would have told myself earlier, going in as an indie filmmaker, I would have said that what you have in your brain is not always going to come out in the finished product. And you have to be okay with that. I grew up being a big fan of George Lucas, Steven Spielberg, Cameron, all these people. I ain't that. I don't have the money that they have. And, there are so many times that I've made a film and I'm just like, this whole film would have been safe if I had a techno crane. I would have gotten those, the whole film would have mattered if I had a techno crane. But, you have to focus on your own voice and manage your expectations. We all can't make Jaws. We all can't make The Abyss. We all can't make, Star Wars, but we can make our own version of it. And, without, letting ourselves down. That's my first thing. Two, kind of hopping back to kind of what Joe said, learn to be a technical filmmaker. Know what the different departments do, or at least have some knowledge of what different departments do. I'm a director, but I have just now started learning to be a cinematographer, and I've gotten extra lights. I've been studying film theory. I've been reading books, Painting with Darkness, all different kinds of lighting craft books, just because that's something else I want to know, something I can work with my collaborators, with my DPs. I got learning the ins and outs of sound, so I can know, make sure I tell, what my audio guy, what I want, try to know what everyone does and become a technical director. That way, just like Joe said, you can collaborate with, all your departments and be closer to the vision that you can get and that you can afford. As a screenwriter, my biggest advice would be, one, to read screenwriting books. We all know Save the Cat, Joseph Campbell's, The Hero's Journey. Some people might think those are boring. Believe it or not, those are fundamental. Go back, read those foundation building blocks of screenwriting, and then read other screenplays. I can't tell you how much my writing has improved from reading other people's screenplays. Like I said earlier, I was literally writing, sheets of black on paper with so much word and descriptions. But when you go back and you read other people's scripts, it's not like you're trying to emulate them, but you see what they're doing. And then from there, you're like, oh, well, he used for a descriptive text, he actually puts a weird font, to make it jump out more at you, to bring you into the story. Read other people's screenplays, and that will definitely help you become a better writer. So that's pretty much all I got.
Well, I appreciate everybody taking all the time this evening to go through and do this. And I still have more questions we haven't even gotten to, but we'll have to do a part 2. So before we get out of here, let's let everybody know where to find you, websites, social media, where to go pick up those latest releases. And because I can do this because somebody left me in charge, we're going to go backwards. So Lisa, you're up first.
Told you you'd call me Lisa. See? I told you. You can find me at elmariewood.com. That's the website where all the stuff is. So if you wanted to learn about books or short stories or where I'm going to be, or log lines for screenplays. We even talk about what a log line is, and that's so important. But don't panic, it's not that bad. If you want to read that kind of stuff, check me out there. You can find me on Twitter at elmariewood1, the number 1, or on Facebook at elmariewood.
Michelle?
Like I said earlier, I'm Octopunk Media. That's here on Instagram. And I'm on Twitter. I'm Lady Tuano, which is like my one place I get to be myself instead of my brand. And then you can also find some of my films as well as a lot of behind the scenes content, trailers, that sort of thing at youtube.com/Octopunk Media, which is my YouTube channel. My first feature live stream is available on rental for VOD, most primarily on Amazon. That's probably the easiest place to get a hold of it, although sometimes you can find it on iTunes and Microsoft and other stores. Live Screamers, its sequel, is coming out later this year, but we still have an Indiegogo campaign that is in demand, so you can still snag some perks like a Blu-ray and some other fun stuff from the set at igg.me/@/live screamers. And I think that's pretty much it. We've got some festival circuit stuff coming up this year. I've got a new short called Fame Fatale that's coming to the circuit, premiering at Crimson Screen Film Festival this month in Columbia, South Carolina, and that'll be around. It'll be at Con Carolinas as well for anybody who's coming to Con Carolinas. So keep an eye out for that.
John?
You can search darkdragonfilms.net. That's where I keep all my movie information, and I'm selling copies of my first short film called The Conduit. It's an ode to the 80s creature feature movies that I grew up on when I was a kid. That Blu-ray and DVDs are packed home with special features. You can look me up on Twitter at darkdragonfilms. You can look me up on Facebook as John Hale. And like I said, later on this year, we're releasing a horror anthology called Worst Laid Plans, which is a vacation horror anthology. Basically, anything that can happen to you while on vacation happens in this film. And currently, we're running an Indiegogo campaign where we're trying to raise funds for a post-production. We have all of our films shot. We just need a little bit more money to help us over the road. So you can go to Indiegogo.com and check out Worst Laid Plans post-production. And yeah, that's pretty much all I got.
Joe?
You can find me on Twitter at JoeDream73 and go to Speculative Fiction Academy. If you want to learn screenwriting, I did a class called Screenwriting 101. It's an 8-week immersive class, and you can go and take that class if you wanted to. I also will eventually this year have the novel turning your novel into a film class up as well there, so you can check those out. Also, if you do decide to make your own movie, or you want to learn more about screenwriting, or you want to talk about your script or anything like that, come to me. Go Indie Now. That's what I do. If you're an indie filmmaker, indie writer, we do programming each and every day, and I have several shows, several different avenues. I have a blog where I review films, which is freshbutteredpopcorn.com, and then goes YouTube/Go Indie Now, Go Indie Now on Instagram, Go Indie Now on Facebook, and on TikTok, I am Joe at Go Indie Now, because that is where I get to be Joe and not my brand. So even though I put Go Indie Now in there, because I didn't want anybody to take Go Indie Now, just in case I wanted the brand, because that happened to me on Twitter. That's why I'm Joe Dream 73 on Twitter, because some jerk wanted $2,000 for the Go Indie Now name. So
And Mark?
You can find me at my website at whoismarklabbott.com. That is also my Twitter handle and my Facebook handle. On my website, though, that's where all of my books are. I've done some revamping, so you can find most of my films there as well. And yeah, that's pretty much where my brand lives. So if you're in the market for anything, check it out, and that's where you'll find me. Oh, and if you ever get a chance, I play a very small role in the movie Slapface, which is on Shudder. I play a father who it was one of those instances where I actually had no lines, and I spoke and then said to the director, "I'm sorry," and he was like, "No, we're keeping that in." So
nice.
When you get a chance, it's a very good indie film. And I'm also with the Speculative Fiction Academy, and we're actually working right now on a religion course. So if you are looking to put some religion in your horror, that class should be up pretty soon. I'm just doing the final stages on that.
Can I say something else, Jim?
Of course.
First of all, I want to say Slap Race is a great movie, and we saw you in it, and we were like, "What?" I kept saying, "I know him. I know him. I know him." Anyway, I wanted to add, but Joe and Mark already said what I was going to say. I'm going to reiterate because Jim has been very modest. The Speculative Fiction Academy, I can't even say it. Speculative Fiction Academy is sort of this project that we're in that teaches, all sorts of writing, including screenwriting. And we have Joe's 101 screenwriting class there, which is really dynamic. We have Terror on the Screen from Mark. I have a primer class there. And our host, Jim, is the business dean. So, already right there, we can just say that it's some amazing stuff. So if you're looking to really bone up on your skills, I know we've said, formatting 75 times, but we couldn't be more serious about it because people will throw it out. And so you have to learn that stuff. If you're interested in taking some courses and understanding more and deep diving into screenwriting, check out speculativeffictionacademy.com.
And I've had the pleasure of being y'all's host this evening. Jim Nettles, you can find me at jamespnettles.com, authoressentials.net, authoressentialsworkshops.com, of course, the Speculative Fiction Academy, and of course, here ConTinual. So we'll see you guys again soon, and everybody have a good evening.